to go and take notes. And I am going to record this session. So, and we'll usually takes 24 to 48 hours. We'll send an email out with a link to the recording for anyone that wants to listen to it again. But again, freight agent versus freight broker, and which one is right for you. Also, we have a chat box. Now, even though I've currently muted everyone, you can unmute yourself at any time. So if you have a question, don't be shy, and you can just shout out, hey, I got a question. I don't understand that. Or can you elaborate? And I'm happy to do that. Or you can simply type in your question into the chat box. Now, if everyone would, make sure, is everyone seeing my screen, which should say live training with Tony starting shortly, freight agent, freight broker, which is right for you. And can everybody hear me okay? So if I could just get you guys typing in, yep, we see it. Yes, we hear it. We're good. Just want to make sure that everybody has what they need to get some good things out of this session. And then we will move along. Okay. Okay, yes, we're good. All right, sounds good. So let's go ahead and get started. As a little background again, I'm the director of Freight Brokers Academy. This is a program we created at this point 7 years ago. 7 years we've been training freight agents and freight brokers. So we're really excited with the amount of people that we've helped get into the industry. But along the way, and especially recently, I've gotten a lot of questions about, you know, which way to go? What's the best way to get started into the business? Should we be just a freight agent? Should we go get our license, get our bond, and become a freight broker? And then people, after they go through the training that we've provided for Freight Brokers Academy and get into the freight brokerage world, they start learning a little bit more. So I thought we'd use today's session to try and maybe point out a few things and clarify for each of you what might be the best way to go for your situation. So let's go ahead and get started. Freight agent versus freight broker, which one is right for you? Now, first of all, I think it would be good to talk about what each of these has in common. One thing that's not nice about both is there really is no previous industry experience that's required. You don't have to have a background in trucking and logistics. You haven't had to be a dispatcher. There are lots of people that got started into this industry with no industry experience whatsoever. So that applies to both freight agent and freight broker. Both, you can work from home or anywhere else for that matter. In fact, that is the typical way that freight brokers and freight agents work. And that was that way even before the pandemic, where that started happening. So they are both situations where you don't have to travel. You get out of bed, you drink your coffee, have breakfast, whatever, and you go to work right there. Another thing they both have in common is a low startup cost. Especially when you compare other businesses or other careers that you might have to pay for college, you might have to pay to go through extensive licensing courses. I mean, to be a licensed realtor or licensed insurance agent or a CPA and different things like that. It takes a long time and it takes a lot of money. And some businesses, like if you got into the trucking business, you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into the trucking business. But in the freight brokerage end, relatively low cost to enter. Another thing that's in common, whether you're a freight agent or freight broker, is there's high demand for your services. There are thousands of shipments each day, and especially right now, there is a lack of trucks, truck drivers, and brokers and agents to help shippers find trucks for their loads, and brokers and agents to help trucking companies find loads for their trucks. And that's that way, whether the economy is booming or the economy isn't. Things have to move from point A to point B. People need toilet paper, whether the economy is good or bad. People need to eat. They need grocery store. So And I think someone just unmuted themselves. So let me go ahead and mute the group again. We got a little reverberation over there. So give me just a moment here. All right, so we're back at it. So again, if you guys would keep your phones muted till you have to make a comment or answer a question or ask a question, I'd appreciate it. So would everyone else in the group. Okay, so high demand, good for both freight agents and freight brokers. Unlimited earning potential. You can make really good money, a lot of it, whether you're working as a freight agent or freight broker. And we'll talk a little bit about the kind of earning potential there is for both positions in just a little bit. But whether you're an agent or a broker, great money you can make working from home. And for both positions, typically you're not working nights, you're not working weekends, you're not working holidays. The people you need to communicate with and deal with, for the most part, are only available during normal working hours, Monday through Friday, with some rare exceptions. On occasion, depending on the situation, you might have a little bit of work on nights or on weekends, but that's not typical or common. So it's nice from that standpoint. Now, let's go ahead and do a little comparison. What's different between a freight agent and a freight broker? And we're going to look at a bunch of different factors. The experience that's needed for each position, the skills that might be needed or required for each position. We'll take a look at the work schedule and how that might vary for a freight agent versus a freight broker. Even though startup costs in general are low for either one, typically there is a difference. So we'll take a look at startup cost. We'll look at how quickly you start making money as a freight agent versus a freight broker. And then we'll look at the more long-term income potential for both. So let's get into it. First, we'll talk about experience needed. Now, as a freight agent, there is no experience required. Literally, you don't have to have any experience in the industry, and there really isn't a particular industry experience that's required. You can have a background in anything and get into freight agent, become a freight agent, get in the industry, and be successful. Now, I will tell you that if you have some sales-related experience in any industry, since this is a sales-related type of position, that could be helpful. It's not required, but that would probably be beneficial. And again, doesn't matter what kind of product, what kind of service, what kind of industry. It could be retail sales in a store. It could be selling insurance. It could be selling whatever. Doesn't matter. It can even be customer service type of things where you had to make unhappy people calm down. I mean, that's the type of sales. So a background dealing with people in a sales or customer service capacity could be helpful, but not required. As a freight broker, again, no particular experience is required to be a freight broker. But if you're planning on building a sales team underneath you, some industry experience might be helpful. For example, if you've been in the trucking business, if you've been a trucker, an owner-operator, if you've been a dispatcher, the reason for that is it would be, as a freight broker licensed managing a business, it would be helpful to know a little bit, have some experience in a related industry to logistics, so that as you get inexperienced new people underneath you, you got a little bit of background. Now, for example, myself, I'd been in the trucking business. I worked as a dispatcher for that business. So I knew a little bit about what worked. Even though I hadn't worked as a freight broker or freight agent before I became a freight broker, I understood how things work with trucking. I understood how to, the process of negotiating rates, finding loads, dealing with brokers, dealing with shippers, and all of those kind of things. So that was helpful. Another thing that's helpful is if you've got a background in sales management or personnel management or business management of some type, again, in any industry, because as a broker, it's your business, it's your license, it's your bond. And especially if you're going to hire people to work underneath you, then having experience managing, hiring, interviewing people, and doing the things that's required to make sure that everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing when they're supposed to be doing it, would be beneficial. So even though it's not required, it would be helpful to have some experience in some kind of business management. So that's a little bit about experience needed and how that varies between the two positions. Now let's move on. There's experience, what you've done in the past, and then there's skills. So let's talk a little bit about the skills that are needed, what you are capable of doing, what you know how to do, and what you do well, skill. So freight agent, I would say basic skill would be an ability to speak clearly and somewhat intelligently. That doesn't mean you got to be the sharpest, brightest, smartest person on the face of the earth. You didn't have to get straight A's or be on the honor roll in school. But since you're going to be talking to people a lot, and there is some negotiation and trust building, speaking clearly and speaking somewhat intelligently, so people get the feel that they'd be comfortable with you handling their business, whether it's a shipper, allowing you to arrange for trucks to haul their freight and make sure it gets where it needs to get on time safely, or it's a trucking company or an individual owner operator, and letting them know that you're going to be representing them well and getting them good paying loads and getting them loads consistently. So again, the ability to speak clearly and intelligently, I think, is a skill that would be recommended, if not required, to become a freight agent. Another thing I think would be a good skill is good listening skills. So you need to ask good questions, and you need to listen, and people will tell you what they're looking for. Trucking companies, owner operators, drivers will tell you the lanes they prefer, the minimum rates that they're looking for before they're willing to haul a load. Shippers will tell you what they need. So I think it's important to have good listening skills as well as being able to speak clearly and intelligently. Now, as a freight agent, since you're working on your own at home and no one's looking over your shoulder every minute of the day, self-discipline and self-motivation, I think, are critical to success in this business. If you're undisciplined and unmotivated, if you need somebody to kick you in the butt every day to get out of bed, if you need somebody to tell you what to do every minute of the day, brokerage in general and being an independent freight agent working from home is probably going to be a tough gig for you. Since you're working on your own, you got to be that kind of person that every day is determined to start work at a certain time and put in a certain number of hours and make a certain number of contacts and do those things consistently without someone cracking the whip and making you do it, without having to punch that time clock every day. So self-discipline, self-motivation, critical skills for a freight agent. And then likely, even though I don't categorize this really as a skill, I'd say it's recommended that you actually like talking to people. Even if you're not great at it, you got to enjoy talking to people, because that's what you're going to be doing 80 to 90% of the time when you first start. So if you don't like talking to people on the phone, or you don't like interacting with people in general, the freight agent, either freight agent or freight broker position is probably good for you. So 3 skills and 1 kind of preference, I guess, that you are the kind of person that likes talking to people, because that's what you're going to be doing on the job. So now, skills needed for a freight broker. Well, number 1, all those same things we talked about as a freight agent, because most of you, if you become a freight broker, at least initially, you're going to be doing the job of a freight agent. You're going to be doing loads or teaching other people to do it. So having the ability to speak clearly and intelligently, having good listening skills, being self-disciplined and self-motivated, and enjoying liking talking to people, that's all important. So all those same things for an agent. But to be a freight broker, you need more. Number 1, since it's your business, I think you need some business management skills. You need to have a basic understanding of things like finance, accounting, personnel management, planning and forecasting, because you're the person that makes the rules. You're the person that charts the course. You're the person that's going to have to hire and possibly train and motivate people. You're the person that needs to understand what margins have to be when you're negotiating rates and you're setting parameters for your freight agents. You need to determine what that minimum profit margin needs to be for every load. Now, you may not be involved in the negotiation on every single load that one of your agents is doing, but you need to set guidelines. And it's based on what your goals are and what your needs are for your business. So understanding basic ratios, basic percentages, keeping track of your expenses, keeping track of your revenue. These are all things that a business owner and a business manager do. And as a freight broker, with your license, your bond, you're the business owner and the business manager. So basic business management skills come into play as a freight broker, especially if you're going to recruit people and you're not just a one-person show. The other thing I think is a skill that's important if you're going to be a freight broker, have a licensed and bonded freight broker business, and recruit freight agents to work underneath you, is you have to have some leadership skills. Now, you don't have to be the greatest leader in the world, but you have to be the kind of person, I think, that, builds trust, in people and things of that nature. And again, you've got to help point people in the right direction, guide them, take them by the hand. So leadership skills, I think, are very important if you're going to be a freight broker. And then in general, again, it's your business, good decision-making skills. You decide who can participate in your business. You decide what freight agents to hire, even office people. For example, you might not be the greatest in accounting. You may not like accounting or finance. You might hire an assistant. But, that's an important decision if you're going to bring someone on either in an administrative or operations capacity, or if you're going to hire agents to represent your company and work underneath your bond. Because if they do something that gives you a bad reputation, well, even if they may be gone someday, it's still your business. That reputation sticks with you. Or, God forbid, they do something that may affect your bond and a claim against your surety bond. That would not be good either. So good decision-making skills, being able to analyze what what kind of margins you want in your business, what kind of policies you want, what kind of people you want to hire. Those types of things are very important, I think, much more so when you're a freight broker than as a freight agent. So next thing, work schedule. Let's see if we have any differences at all between a freight agent and a freight broker. Well, freight agent, basically you're working Monday through Friday. And I'd say typical starting between 7 and 8 a.m. and typically you're ending somewhere between 4 and 5 p.m., depending on in whatever work zones that you plan to work in. Now, I say 7 to 8 because in this business, I think a lot of people start early. So I would personally suggest maybe if you wanted to start earlier in whatever time zone and finish a little earlier. My experience is you didn't get near as much done after 3:30, 4 o'clock as you did between, say, 7:30 and 9 a.m. when everybody's looking for loads for their trucks, when all the shippers are looking for trucks to get their loads situated. Nobody wants to be stuck mid to late afternoon, still looking for loads for their trucks or still looking for trucks for their loads. So, but in general, Monday through Friday, 7 to 4, 8 to 5, 7 to 5, somewhere in that range is your typical work schedule for a freight agent. And typically, there's no need for you to work any nights or weekends or holidays. The people you need to deal with to schedule loads just aren't working at that time. So from that standpoint, there's not a whole lot of variation in terms of work schedule. Now, with a freight broker, you're probably working, especially if you're actually actively doing loads yourself, you're working those same hours as a freight agent, 7 or 8 a.m. in the morning to 4 or 5 p.m. in the evening, Monday through Friday. But because it's your business and there are other tasks that are necessary and important to running a business, you probably are putting in 1 to maybe 2 hours more per weekday and maybe even a few hours on the weekend. Reviewing reports, preparing for the following week, whatever. So there's just things involved in running a business more so than if you're working as an agent and somebody else has the responsibility of running the business part of it. There's paperwork, there's planning, there's doing payroll. Again, as an agent, somebody else is handling payroll and making sure you get a paycheck every week. As the broker, it's your responsibility to handle payroll for your agents or to make sure somebody else is doing it. Invoicing, you don't get any money from a shipper until you send an invoice to them for a completed load, and making sure that all the paperwork that's necessary, like the bill of lading, a proof of delivery, things of that nature, the original load confirmation, goes with that invoice. So again, there are things that have to happen. Accounts payable, you got to make sure the bills are paid. You got to keep the lights on. You got to make sure if you've got insurance, that insurance gets paid every month. Depending on how you set up your bond, you might have a payment to make monthly or quarterly for your bond. And of course, if you want freight agents working underneath you, if that's one of the reasons you want your license and bond is so you can leverage that opportunity to make more money, then you've got to spend time recruiting and training. And maybe the best time for that is, after 4 o'clock, when it's not as productive to be on the phone talking to potential prospects, and possibly on Saturday. So evenings and some time on the weekend, or some time before, early in the morning before everyone starts on the phone. So these are all things that as a freight broker with your own brokerage business that you've got to think about, and will generally take some additional time and effort on your part as opposed to being just an agent. And, whatever else is involved in running that business. So little differences in the time involved and the work schedule. Now let's take a look at startup costs. Okay. Well, for a freight agent, it's almost nothing because typically somebody else is running the business. You're working underneath their license. So you have no licensing expenses. You don't have to worry about a bond. You don't have to worry about insurance. You don't have to worry about office. Typically, you're spending a few $100 on training if you don't have any experience at all. So you're going through a program like our program, Freight Brokers Academy. It's recommended you have a dedicated phone, not just your personal cell phone. So either you add a second line for, $10 a month on your phone, or you might have a separate cell phone altogether. Some people prefer landlines. I don't recommend them because then you're tied down to a location. I think the best thing is just to either have a separate cell phone or a second phone line on your phone. There's apps, all kinds of apps for $9.95 a month. It gives you a separate ringtone, a separate voicemail, so you know when a business call is coming through. Internet service, everybody already has it, so that's usually not even a startup expense. And then it's recommended you have, and usually one of these all-in-ones, printer, copier, scanner. Some of them have a fax too. I don't really even recommend a separate fax anymore. We used to, but not many people use them anymore. So if you've got one of these printer, scanner, copiers all in one, which many people already do, then that's no expense. If you don't, those are pretty cheap, $100, $150. You don't need anything real fancy. So again, startup costs for a freight agent are pretty minimal, typically well under $1,000, and in most cases, a few $100s. And in some cases, you can get away with almost nothing. So easy, quick, inexpensive to become a freight agent. Now, freight broker, on the other hand, there are expenses. So I recommend that if you don't have at least $2,000, bare minimum, and possibly as much as $5,000, sometimes even more, saved up and available for startup costs, freight brokerage, being a licensed and bonded freight broker going down that route right from the start may not be the best thing. And here's why. You've got the cost of the actual broker license. That's a few $100s. You got the cost of the $75,000 surety bond. Now, you don't have to have $75,000, but typically, if you've got really good credit, you may have a one-time fee of $1,000 per year or a little less once a year. Sometimes you pay quarterly, and that could be anywhere from $500 to $1,000 quarterly, or sometimes you pay monthly. There are different ways that can be done. If you can pay one lump sum once per year, you're usually paying less. If you have less money to work with, you might need to pay it quarterly or monthly. But either way, getting that bond at least for that first year, it's going to be a minimum of $1,000 and could be more. Also, the cost of contingent cargo liability insurance. Now, insurance is not a licensing requirement, but it's a practical requirement. And here's why. Most of the larger shipping companies require a broker to have contingent cargo liability insurance. So just in case one of the trucks that you give one of their loads to breaks down, it's a reefer, all the ice cream in the back melts, and say they let their insurance lapse on the trucking company, nobody knew about it, nobody caught it in time, then they can fall back on your insurance just in case. So there's going to be a cost to set up that, usually at least a few $100s to get started, sometimes more. You can pay it annually, pay it quarterly, pay it monthly, and then that's going to be a monthly cost if you didn't pay it all up front. And then typically, we're going to recommend you have 1 to 3 months, minimum one, you got to have, and I'd say a good 3 months of operating expenses for the business. Load board service, that's usually a monthly service, and you could get as cheap as $29 a month, $49 a month, but some of them, to give you all the bells and whistles, can be over $100 a month, depending on what you go with. Logistics software that'll help you to generate your load confirmations, help you to do your invoicing, help you to do your marketing, help you to interact with posting loads on different load boards. Again, that could be $100 a month. Payroll. I recommend that new agents go to a brokerage firm where they're not going to make you wait until they get paid. Now, it could take 30 days from the time that a freight brokerage company invoices a shipper, sometimes longer, for the freight brokerage company to get paid. And some freight brokerage companies have a policy that the agent doesn't get paid until they get paid. However, some of the larger freight brokerage companies and some of the smarter ones can attract better agents if they'll pay, within 7 to 10 days, once a week, once every 2 weeks of when that load was delivered. Because at that point, basically the agent's done their job. It's not their responsibility to collect the money. It's not their responsibility to invoice. So your willingness to pay your agents, if you're going to have them, before even you get paid, will help you to recruit agents quicker and help you to attract better agents. But in order to do that, you got to have some money. You got to have some money set aside. So operating expenses becomes, again, you could bare bones it with $2,000 or $3,000, but I usually recommend you got about $5,000, maybe a little bit more, depending on your strategy, depending on if you want to start recruiting agents right off the bat, where it gives you a little more flexibility. And then the last thing I think you need to consider is, hey, dollars to cover your own personal bills. That's a consideration too. I know some of you on this call right now just finished up working somewhere else. You were a truck driver, you were a teacher, you were a whatever, and now you're transitioning into this new business. Well, that means if you're not working at that last job or that last business, you may not have that $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month coming in from there. Well, you're still going to have bills, right? You're still going to have your rent or mortgage payment. You're still going to have the electric bill come in, the phone bill, the water bill, sewer, garbage pickup, gas for the car payment, credit card payments, kids' tuition, all those bills keep coming in. So the other thing you may need to consider is, if you're devoting your time now to starting this new business, and until that business really starts cranking the money in, should I have some money set aside to pay my personal bills while I'm waiting for my business to get in? Because the reality is, we're going to talk about this as well, is as a freight broker, you're not going to get money immediately. And one of the reasons is, and I think we'll talk about this here momentarily. Let me click on over income potential, and how quickly we can start making money. So we look at the differences here. As a freight agent, almost immediately you can start making money. Could be as quickly as a few weeks. Now, we don't expect to be on $100,000 per year pace right from day one. It usually takes a few months to build up that consistent volume to meet your minimum monthly goals. But again, you can start making money right away. You're going to work for a freight brokerage firm. Again, within a few weeks, boom, you're doing loads. And if it's for one of those freight brokerage firms, that all you got to do is have your load delivery confirmed, and then they may pay you that very next week once the load that you scheduled got a confirmed delivery. It may take them 30 days to get paid, but you're right there. Now, as a freight broker, not nearly as quickly, because number one, it takes a minimum of 3 weeks to get your application for your license approved after you've completed it and submitted it and paid the application fee. And you have to have everything else in place before you can even attempt to start scheduling loads. So you got to have your bond in place. You got to have your BOC3 agents in all the different states that you're working. You got to have that license back. So it's not as immediate. It's not as quick to get the money in. Now, potentially, it may be much more significant. We'll talk about that in a minute. But getting money, getting revenue, in other words, how quickly can you start making money, not as quick as a freight broker. And that's another reason why you got to have some money saved. You got to have a little bit of money stashed, because it's going to take a little longer to start getting that new revenue in. So, income potential. There's how quick can I start making money? And then there's how much money can I make in the long run? So let's look at that difference between freight agent and freight broker. First off, I think if you took across the board freight agent potential first year, usually a decent freight agent, average freight agent that works a full year, typically is going to make in the $50,000 to $75,000 range. Now, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. I've seen agents that were really good, worked really hard, make even 100,000 plus their first year. But I'd say typically the average falls within that $50,000 to $75,000 range. And for agents that have been on the job at least a year, it is not uncommon for them to earn 100,000 plus from that point on. Because one of the things about this business, the longer you're in the business, the easier it gets and the more productive it is. Because once you've scheduled a load, once you've secured a shipper, you're constantly, unless you screw up somehow, you're getting more loads from them. So each time you add a new shipper, you have more volume. Each time you add a new trucking company and you get them good paying loads, they're going to keep coming back to you for more of those good paying loads. So the more shippers you have, the more carriers you have, and the longer you're in the business, the higher your volume goes and the more money comes in. So in this business, it's just that way. The longer you're in it, that income just keeps going up. So just having that stick-to-itiveness and staying in the business and doing those basic things is critical. And our top freight agents who've been in the business for several years, it's not uncommon to consistently, each and every year, earning that 100,000 to 200,000 per year range. I had one of my graduates a couple years ago. He quickly, within a couple weeks, went through the course. Even technically, before he finished it, he was out interviewing, talking to brokers, got himself a position. And the place he went to work for, he said, there were 8 or 10 people that were, and this was when he went to one that actually had an office. He was going to go work in an office, which is not the most common thing. But he said he had a chance to meet everybody. Every single agent that was in that office had been working for that company for several years, and every single one of them was earning over $100,000 a year. And that is not uncommon for experienced freight agents. You don't start out that way, but that's the potential. So just being able to stick it out in time, it keeps getting easier, it keeps getting more profitable. So long-term potential, good. Now, freight broker. It is not uncommon for a freight broker, someone who has a licensed and bonded freight brokerage business, to earn up to 100,000 or even more that first year. And one of the reasons is because you get to keep 100% of the commission on your sales. So if you didn't do a single dollar more in gross volume, if you didn't schedule one single more load than a typical freight agent, you're going to earn 40 to 50% more than an agent doing the same amount of volume, because you, as the broker of record, keep 100% of the commission. So typically for the same results, you are making more money because you invest in the license and bond, you're taking on that responsibility. And the same thing applies then as your business, the longer you're in business, the more your brokerage firm, the more shippers and the more carriers that the firm is dealing with, then the easier it is to increase that revenue. So it's not uncommon to consistently earn $100,000 to $500,000 per year after that first year. And the potential much higher as a freight broker. And there are many firms that have now been in business for several years that are consistently earning over $1 million annually, especially if they have a team of freight agents working underneath them. Because every load that a freight agent schedules for your firm, you are making 25 to sometimes as much as 60% of the revenue, the net revenue, from each one of those agents. So then it's not just your work ethic, your results, it's what all those agents that are working underneath your license are doing, and you're getting a piece of that pie, and sometimes a pretty big chunk of the pie. And let's take a closer look at this, because I think this is one of the greatest things about having a freight brokerage license and bond in place to really leverage the opportunity in this industry. So again, freight agent, income is generated from you and your activity. That's the only way you make money, from what you do, from the loads you arrange for and get delivered. And let's say as an agent, and typically starting out, you're usually going to earn 40 to 50% of the net revenue, somewhere in that range for each load. Most new agents aren't starting at higher than 50%, and a lot of them don't even start that high. And even an experienced freight agent usually tops out at 60 to 65% commission, sometimes higher, but again, that's usually the max that you're going to earn even when you're experienced as an agent. Freight broker, again, you're making 100% of the net fee revenue from your loads, and you have the opportunity to earn 40 to 60% of the net revenue from all the agents working underneath you. So let's see how those numbers play out when we kind of use a little basic math. So let's say you average $10,000 in net fee revenue per month from loads you secure. I'm using round numbers. I don't want to go too fast, but again, this is somewhere in the 2 to 3 loads a day. Okay, 10 to 15 loads a week, and that's not a huge amount. Okay, I would say that's a little below average actually. So 10,000 in net fee revenue, not a lot. 2 or 3 loads a day, doing minimums of $1,000 load. 15% margin, which are typically what you're shooting for. So if as a freight agent, you're doing 10,000 per month in net fee revenue, that means if you're on a 40 to 60% commission, which most agents are in that range, you're earning $4,000 to $6,000 per month in commission. And that breaks down to $48,000 to $72,000 a year. So again, there's kind of like that range we talked about in that first year as a freight agent. Now, you're a freight broker. It's your business, your license, your bond. So you've got that same $10,000 of net fee revenue per month for the loads you secure. But since you're getting 100% of the revenue from your loads, now that equates to, instead of $48,000 to $72,000 a year, that's $120,000 per year to you, because you get 100% of it. So you see the difference in having your own licensed and bonded freight brokerage business versus being a freight agent. Now let's take it a little further. Let's use that same example. Freight agent, $10,000 a month in net revenue. That equates to $4,000 to $6,000 a month in commissions. That equates to $48,000 to $72,000 a year. Not a bad gig. But now a freight broker with agents working underneath them. You decide you don't want to just do all the selling yourself. And let's say because you're hiring and managing agents, you don't have as much time. to devote to your own personal sales. So let's say now you only generate $5,000 a month in net fee revenue because you're doing other things. You're trying to grow your business. And now, as that, you're going to have to spend some more time with your new freight agents, and you're going to have more paperwork, and you're going to have a lot of other things. Your payroll is going to be bigger. So you're going to have, so there's going to be some time. So you do just half of the volume you were doing when you were just a freight agent or when you were working 100% of your time as freight brokerage. But since you're getting 100% of the commission, you're still making $50,000 a year from your own sales. And let's say that time that you weren't working on personal sales, you recruited 10 freight agents. And those 10 freight agents now are doing an average job as freight agents, and they're each generating $10,000 per month in fee revenue from the loads they're securing. Each one of them do 2 or 3 loads a day, 10 to 15 loads a week. That's $10,000 per month for each of them. That's $100,000 a month in fee revenue. And you're getting 40 to 60% of that because you're paying them 40 to 60%, depending on where they are. If they're brand new, they're in that 40 to 50% range. If they're not, they may be as high as 60. But that means you're receiving 40 to 60% of that 100,000. That's 40 to 60,000 per month from those 10 agents that are doing an average job, 2 or 3 loads a day, minimum 10,000 in revenue a month. And that now equates to $480,000 to $720,000 per year from your freight agents. So here we see the benefit, the opportunity of having your own freight brokerage license and bond your own business, and leveraging it by recruiting and managing freight agents underneath you. Freight agent by yourself, 48 to 72,000 first year or so. Even if you become one of the most productive freight agents out there and you're averaging 100 to 200,000 a year, that's nowhere near by just doing a lackluster job in your own sales, spending a minimal amount of time, maybe no time at all selling yourself, but having 10 agents that do an average job working underneath you, and you're in the $500,000 plus up to $750,000 per year with just 10 freight agents. So, which is best for you? It's not just about money potential. Let's take a look because there are some other factors. Let's do a kind of review. So you're a freight agent. I think freight agent is probably best for you if you never want to work past 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, and you never want to work on the weekends. Because as a freight broker, and especially if you're going to have people working underneath you, you're going to have to put in a few more hours. It just happens. Not as much as some businesses you could manage and run, but yeah. So, but never want to work past 4 p.m., never want to work nights, never want to work weekends. Freight agent, probably best. You want to be able to take off anytime you want. Since you're only responsible for yourself and nobody's looking over your shoulder, you're working from home, basically you can take off anytime you want. You take off, you could have a 2-hour lunch. You could take off early at 3 o'clock one day. You could schedule something personal, come in late to your bedroom office, whatever. So if you want to be able to take off anytime you want, freight agent, that's probably the best bet. If you don't like paperwork, freight agents, typically there's very little paperwork. You get it to a certain point, you schedule that load, somebody else can pump out, the broker or an assistant, in that organization can pump out paperwork confirmations. Yeah, sometimes the software does a lot of that for you. But running a business, there's paperwork involved. That's where some of those extra hours come in. Now, if you don't like to deal with accounting, taxes, legal matters, as a business owner, there's going to be those kind of things. Freight agent might be best. You don't have to deal with any of that stuff. You don't deal with payroll. You don't deal with taxes, accounting, legal, licensing, none of that. But if you don't want to be responsible for anyone else, you just want to manage yourself, freight agent. That's the way to go. Because that's it. You're responsible for yourself, nobody else. And if $100,000 per year would be nice, but you'd be okay earning $48,000 to $72,000 a year working at an easy job where you never have to work past 4 p.m. on a Monday through Friday. You never have to work weekends, never have to do much of paperwork, never have to deal with any accounting, don't have to manage anybody else. Just sit back on your lounge chair in the back room of your apartment, your house, and talk to people on the phone every day and send a few emails. That freight agent, that's the gig for you. Now, freight broker, if you want to be in total control of your business with nobody else telling you what to do or how to do it, then freight brokerage might be the way to go. If you don't want to split your commission with anybody else, you want 100% of everything you do, freight broker might be the way to go. If you like managing people, if you like teaching people, because it's required, you're going to have to manage some people, you're going to have to teach some people, you're going to have to maybe do a little motivation. If you have freight agents working underneath you, if you like that kind of stuff, then freight broker might be the better choice for you. If you've previously owned or managed your own business or managed a business for somebody else and you liked it, say, man, I'd like to do this for myself. If you like that kind of, control, influence, you enjoy the challenge, you enjoy charting your own course, freight broker might be the best way to go. And if you want to maximize your income potential, you have big goals. 100,000, nice, but that's not anywhere near what I'm thinking. Yeah, I want that $1 million. I want that several $100,000 a year consistently. I have big goals. If that's you, then freight broker business might be the way to go. And finally, you got to have a little money. You can't start bare bones. You got to have a minimum, I think, $3,000 to $5,000 to invest and get your business off the ground, because it's not going to happen overnight. You got to wait a few weeks. Just once you applied for the application, it's going to take a little bit of time to put some stuff together. And there are a lot of other things involved. So I just think making sure you got enough money for your personal bills, making sure you got a 1 to 3 months overhead for your business, all the little things, making sure you got the basic startup cost to pay for the application fee, pay for the bond, pay for insurance, pay for the logistics software, and your load board access and all those things. You got to have a few $1,000s bare minimum, or don't even think about becoming a freight broker. It's probably a losing proposition. It won't work well for you. Now, some cases, I know at least one of our folks has already paid for a bond and a license, and they've got their own small trucking business. They're an owner operator. So in that case, you might have, at this point, less startup costs. You're still going to have some additional outlay, but you've got revenue coming from one business, a related business, your own little trucking business. And so you got that revenue. You don't have to worry about your personal expenses. And maybe in the past, you already invested some money. So now you're ready. So that would be the only exception to having minimum $3,000 to $5,000 set aside, totally dedicated to get your business off the ground. So there you have it. Which is best for you? And both opportunities. There's not a good or a bad or a best for everybody. For some people, freight agent, it's an awesome thing. It's a great career. You can make a lot of money and not work real hard, not be real stressed, have a lot of fun. I mean, fantastic. There's some people that never become freight brokers. They don't want the hassle. They don't want the responsibility. They don't want the additional things they have to do. They're perfectly happy making $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, $125,000 a year and letting somebody else worry with headaches. And then there's other people that, want to take on a bigger challenge and have a bigger potential reward and opportunity. So which one's right for you? Only you know the answer to that. Now, if Freight Agent sounds like you, then all you need is Freight Brokers Academy. I know many of you are already in the course. This is one of our monthly free trainings for our students and our graduates. I know some of you have already graduated. You're already working out there. And again, every month we're doing one of these. And if you got questions along the way, we provide one-year support. So, call, text, email, attend these sessions. If Freight Broker sounds like you, then you may want to attend our special information session we're having this Monday 2 times. And these are the only sessions. It's a new program, Freight Broker Business Success. Everything you need to know about starting a freight broker's business, getting it off the ground and running it successfully, including how to recruit, train, manage, and motivate freight agents. Everything step by step, how to get the most out of your business and take advantage of that license and that bond and really leveraging that opportunity. So this Monday at 1 p.m. and 6 p.m. And I think we have that information. If you go to our website, which should be around here somewhere. Dang. If you go to the Freight Brokers Academy website, you can click on how the Freight Broker Business Success Group works. And little session here on why we created the program and what it's all about. So again, that's just freightbrokersacademy.com. And there's a spot where you can actually register. So there's a little video you can watch. And then if you want to register for one of those times on Monday, just give us your first name, your email address, and then register for whichever one you want to attend. And we'll go into more detail about what it takes to become successful and to run a freight brokerage business, and how this new program could possibly help you if that's the path you want to take. And then in the meantime, that's basically it for our presentation and training today. I'm going to go ahead and open it up now for questions and answers. And let me take a look at the chat and see if I've got anything typed in here from anybody. Freight agent route. Okay. That's fine. Blah, blah, blah. I know someone who would like to start a carrier company with using owner operators. He'll lease a trail. Okay, yeah. And I got somebody about ready to finish up the course, and they don't want to go the route. They can't afford the surety bond right now, and that's perfectly fine. We have lots of people that start as freight agents and never become freight brokers. But then we have a whole nother large percentage that will start as freight agents and work for maybe a year, build up a clientele, get a good cash flow going, and then become freight brokers. So it's not like I got to choose right now and it's either or forever. Some people want to become a freight broker right off the bat. That's what I did. I never went to work for anybody as a freight agent. I went straight as a freight broker. Made a bunch of mistakes, I'll be honest. I wasted a lot of time, wasted a lot of money, wasted a lot of effort. It would have been nice to have someone holding my hand, but that's one of the reasons we started this Freight Broker Business Success Program, to kind of try to alleviate so that no one else has to go through what I went through. But you can do that. Or there's a lot of people that will just start as freight agents, work for 6 months, a year, couple years, and then decide to go on and get their own license. After they've got the experience, they've built up a clientele, they've got a nice solid cash flow going, and there's no right way for everybody, whatever you're most comfortable with. Okay, and I'm gonna, actually you can unmute yourself, anybody here. So if anybody else has a question, feel free to just unmute yourself and shout on out. And I'm happy to answer any other questions for whoever. Or type it in the chat box. Okay. Hey, we need to talk. And for those of you, the other option is, you can call for, if you're not quite sure still. Again, let me encourage you to go to freightbrokersacademy.com and register for one of those sessions, or call me. My number's here at the bottom of the screen, but it's 863-508-3084. Happy to have a quick chat with somebody that's still not quite sure. Again, if you attend one of the sessions on Monday, 1 p.m. or 6 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to cover in great detail everything involved in starting up and building a successful freight broker business. Again, if you're just looking to become a freight agent, or at least now, again, you may have goals to possibly someday have your own license and bond, but right now you want to start minimal cost and you haven't gone through the program yet, just go to freightbrokersacademy.com, click, get started, $200 you're in, and at your own pace. Some people finish up in a week or two. If you're working another full-time job somewhere, you could take a month and a half. I've had people that were still in the military and took several months because they weren't going to get out of the military. I had people that had full-time jobs elsewhere that they were finishing up on, and they wanted this to be their second career. So whatever your situation is, feel free. So call me, email success@freightbrokersacademy.com. Yes? Is that a raised hand, Cassandra? Do you have a question? Go ahead.
Why am I always being kicked out of my login?
Don't know. I have, it's kind of weird. I have some folks that never have a problem. And I think sometimes, and I'm not a computer whiz, but there's something about from whether it's a phone or a laptop, usually it seems to happen more often with a smartphone, where it remembers something and it goes to one place and that's changed, and for whatever reason. So I don't know. If you have a problem, you had a login password and all of a sudden it's not letting you in, or then just all I can say is call or email. We'll reset it. Some people never have a problem. Some people it happens once and that's done. And other people, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because they're traveling and they when they're in a different area, or if they're logging in from a different laptop, desktop, phone, tablet, it doesn't read it the same way. Don't know. It's very, very odd. So all I can say is we'll get you reset as quickly as we can. We'll set up a new password if for some reason the password stops working. I can recommend, though, if you have an opportunity, virtually everything that's online at Freight Brokers Academy is downloadable. So the text can be downloaded. They're either PDFs or Word documents. The videos you can download, the audio stuff you can download, so you don't even have to be logged in to the internet to do this stuff. And of course, because it's internet based, you can log in pretty much at any time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, but it is all downloadable as well. So if you don't want to have to worry about accessing it, or there's some areas, like if you're traveling, if you're a truck driver or an owner operator, and some areas don't have the greatest internet access, then sometimes the answer is downloading it so you can have access to it anytime you want, regardless of whether you have an internet connection or not. But good question. One new message. Can I call after this session? Absolutely, you can call after this session. Yeah, and feel free, anybody, to call anytime you want, send an email anytime you want. I may not be available, but if you leave me a message, I will return your call. I get 300 plus emails a day, so if I don't respond immediately, I will. I'm checking my emails on a daily basis, usually a couple times a day. But because I get so many of them, it may not be an immediate response, but I do try to respond to all emails within 24 hours if it's during a work week. Yeah, if you send me something on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday, it might take 24 to 48 hours. But I do check all my emails, and I do my best to respond to emails as promptly as possible. Any other questions from anybody else before we wrap up today's session?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
My question is, do you offer any kind of job placement at the freight agent training?
We do. As a matter of fact, throughout the years, we used to guarantee job placement. We stopped doing that actually about a year and a half ago, but we're about ready to implement that again on a guaranteed basis. We've now come to the point where we have graduates of our program who have gone on to start their own freight brokerage firms and are now willing to hire our graduates because they know how good the program is. We also have identified companies who don't require any previous experience, but like the fact that someone has invested their time, their effort, and their money to go through a training program that are willing to hire a graduate. So in a final module of our training program, there are links and contact information for companies that are willing to hire inexperienced freight agents and companies that are willing to specifically hire our graduates that are familiar with the program that we have. And we update that section at least once a month, if not every few weeks, so that getting a position as a freight agent once you finish the Freight Brokers Academy program is not a problem. Good question. Any other questions? And yes, Linda, we can give you names and numbers for graduates who are brokers who might be who you can contact. Again, like I said, they will be in that final section, transitioning from Freight Brokers Academy to the real world. And we're going to have a whole nother group of those that will be available soon, because we're going to be starting this new Freight Broker Business Success Program. And one of the benefits that freight brokers will get from being part of this program is that they will be preferred brokers that we will funnel our freight agents to, our graduates to, because we also know that they understand how to run the business right. So we want to recommend our students to places we know that our students, our graduates, are going to be treated well, treated fairly, and who understand the basics of properly running a freight broker business. And since they've gone through our training program, we know they at least understand the basics of how to do it and how to do it right, and how to properly treat a new freight agent.
Oh, that would be great, because I just finished up your course, except for the very last module that you just added.
Yes. Okay. Great.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So
about
the
it.
last module again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. I'm glad you're excited. You should be excited. This is a great time to get into the business. There's a huge demand for what you're going to be doing out there. There is a shortage of trucks. There's a shortage of freight brokers, and there's no shortage of freight that needs to move from point A to point B. So there's a lot of opportunity. And another question, how long does the training take? Well, we kind of already talked about that, but again, as a reminder, Myron, that basically it's self-paced. I have had people take and finish the course within a week or two and be out there, securing a position as a freight agent and starting to work and generate commissions. But I've also had people that had other priorities. They knew they wanted to do this, but they had a timetable. I had someone that just, finished up a job career elsewhere, and they had maintained that job through the training and several weeks, maybe a month even after they finished the training, and were taking their time. So it could be a week or two, or you could take a couple of months. You could go back through it. However long it takes initially, we always recommend that you go back and rewatch videos, re-listen to audio training programs, reread the information, because this is stuff that you'll be able to use all along the way. We use real world examples. We talk about basic things fundamental things you need to understand and do on a day-to-day basis. So we hope that even if it only takes you a week or two to go through the initial program, that this information, these videos, and what we teach, you'll be able to use for as long as you're in the business.
Great.
And that's true, because even though I drove for 10 years almost, all of your information, I'm going to have to go back over it again and again, because it's so much to absorb.
Well, yes, we tried to be complete and thorough, but again, some things like we talk about situations, we record sessions like this, like we're doing now, and we'll get a question like somebody will be out there, they're a new freight agent, they've been out in the world for a month or two, and they get a specific situation. And they say, well, I got this kind of shipping company and they want me to quote on these kind of lanes and these kind of rates and this kind of situation, and we'll talk through that. So we may spend 5 minutes on talking about all the different options and the things you got to consider and the best way to present it. And, you know, that's pretty specific. We talk about the process. So you may remember listening to that or watching that like a year down the road, say, hey, I remember that same situation was in training. I got to go find that video. I got to go re-listen to that audio. So yes, this is, you know, we over the years in sessions like this, which we've recorded and then put into our training program. So the longer our training program is there, the more complete it is, the better it is, the more information, the more good stuff you have to work off of. So when you get out there in the real world and you're in certain situations, even if you don't remember everything, it'll pop in your head. Wow, I remember that from training. You can go back, rewatch the video, re-listen to the audio, reread that segment, and use that stuff in the real world. And that's what we're hoping for. That, you know, so we try and make it very, very practical to the things that you're going to be doing on a daily basis. Okay, I think I got time for maybe one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up for today. Anybody else got anything?
I have a question, Tony.
Yes.
Yeah, you need a business license or maybe an LLC to get started as an agent?
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I didn't quite get that.
Do you need a business license or an LLC to get started as an agent?
Okay, business license for an LLC. Okay, there are a lot of different ways, different categories.
You see what we just went through, eh?
You could have a corporation, you could have an LLC, you could be a sole proprietorship. And I'm going to mute out everybody for right now. We got a little background. But you don't have to do any of those things as a freight agent. And technically, even as a freight brokerage business, the license could be in your name personally. Now, I typically recommend if you're going to have a business with a license, a bond, and have people working underneath you, and you're going to have payroll and all that kind of stuff, that you do take the time, and that's a potential added expense, to set up an LLC or set up an S Corp or a C Corp. There's different categories. This is why I said if you're going to broker business, you got to have a little bit of understanding of finance and taxes and things, and legal, how to set up a legal business entity. So depending on where you're at, some states, some local municipalities do require an occupational license. And if you set up a corporation or an LLC with the state, that's a matter of public record. And if your county requires a business license or an occupational license, then you may need to pay the $50 a year for an occupational license. And your business, for your business, you are running a business out of your home. So the business address is your home, and the business name may be ABC Logistics, or it could be Tony DeCreasy Inc. That's kind of up to you. And again, as a freight agent, you don't need any of that. I mean, you could. I've had people that, as freight agents, that was their business, and the freight agent business was, you know, Joe Jones Inc. Or they did a little DBA, doing business as, and so they could set up a business bank account, and people could cut checks to, you know, Mary Smith Logistics. So those are kind of your personal decisions, and it takes into account, you may want to talk to your CPA or accountant. I actually have a small accounting firm. I have a background in that. And especially if you're going to go on to the freight brokerage business, I am happy to discuss some of those matters. I am not a licensed attorney. I'm not a member of the Bar Association. I do not give legal advice. Go to a licensed attorney for that in your state. But I do know a lot about legal structures, and I do know a lot about taxes. So I'm happy to discuss those things with you. And in fact, in our Freight Broker Business Success Program, we cover some of those things. We talk about taxes. one of the things we even do is help people do their profit and loss statements and their income and expense statements and things of that nature. And in some cases, even help them with preparing taxes, their tax return at the end of the year. So those are some important considerations for any business, not just the brokerage business. And that's something you want to discuss with your attorney, your CPA, or if you're part of the Freight Broker Business Success Group. Those are some of the things we'll be talking about for that small group of people that's in that program and what would be best for you in your situation. And again, how can I contact you? Again, at the bottom of the page here, if anyone needs to contact me, there's my email address or an email address that'll come to me, success@freightbrokersacademy.com. I get that email, comes to me, or our primary phone number, which rings at my desk, 863-508-3084. So right down at the bottom of the page should be my contact information, our contact information, or you could go to the Freight Brokers Academy website and just freightbrokersacademy.com. And I think pretty much anywhere you go, there'll be contact information there. I think there is a place on here where you can just contact Freight Brokers Academy. So you can click on that there, and then you can ask a question right on our website. So you just put in your first name, your email address, and whatever question you've got. And so a whole bunch of different ways to contact us through our website, contact page, call, email. Happy to assist any way that we can. Okay, and I think with that, we're going to wrap it up. If anybody else had any other questions, again, feel free to call, email, or go to our website. And don't forget about Monday's special session, especially if you are interested in going the Freight Broker Business route. Thank you, everybody, for attending. It's been my pleasure to have this little session with you today. I wish all of you great success, best of luck, and hopefully we can help just a little bit along the way to make life easier for you and help you to make more money and have a successful career in the freight brokerage business. Take care, everyone.